All right, college football. We do it every week. It's our college football weekend preview. I love doing it. I always say that. One of my favorite segments of the week. We've had some loaded weekends past few weeks here in CFB. Wouldn't call this one loaded. There's still some solid games, and we're going to break down what do we got here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 games that we're going to be discussing. I think they're the 6 best games. One of them is a local game. How about that? Oh, Cincinnati, Baylor. Going to be discussing that a little bit on the show. But overall, I think there's going to be great games. College football, conference realignment, transfer portal, NIL. It's been a great year once again, and it's going to continue. By the way, not a ton of ranked matchups, but there is a couple, and we of course will discuss them. 2 big ones in the SEC. But let's start with the big noon game on Fox. I am so excited for this game, to be completely honest with you, and I am talking about UCLA and Indiana. Indiana, the number 2 team in the country in the AP poll. I have them at number 3 in my rankings. We posted that video, by the way, yesterday. Check that out if you haven't done so already. Indiana's really good. I've said that. They are real. This isn't the, cute little Indiana story of last year that didn't play anybody. No, this is a really good team in Indiana. There is a good chance that they can win a national title. And, you talk about these teams. And I feel like the top 3 teams in the country right now, Ohio State, Alabama, and Indiana, they're all kind of moving different, right? And their head coaches are kind of moving with a different confidence and swagger. And Cignetti certainly is doing that at Indiana as well. And they've got a lot of belief in what they're doing. They got a lot of belief in their quarterback in Mendoza there as well, who some people would say is, the Heisman frontrunner. I would take, Simpson and Sayin over him, but he's a great football player. Cal transfer, of course, year 1, replacing Curtis Rourke at that quarterback position, and he's done a tremendous job. But this UCLA story is incredible. They started out 0-4 on the year. Remember, they're a Big Ten team now. Obviously, it's a conference game. And, sometimes you start 0-4, and it's like, well, maybe you played some good teams, right? No, not really. They lost to New Mexico, Northwestern, and UNLV, who only has the 1 loss, but come on. You're UCLA, UNLV, and UNLV beat them up there as well. So they start out 0-4. They have all these staff changes. They fire their head coach. They're switching play callers. They're switching all types of stuff here at this point. Obviously, you start out 0-4. There's issues in the locker room, questions on do you even want to be here, leave if you don't, right? It's just total turmoil for UCLA. And they make those changes, and they respond immediately. They've won 3 straight games. 3 straight games have the UCLA Bruins. They beat Penn State, which at the time was like, oh, my God, you beat Penn State. They had lost to Oregon the previous week, but people still viewed Penn State as a potential national title team. Obviously, that's not the case anymore. They fired James Franklin. They're in shambles. They just lost to Iowa, right? But still, at the time, huge win. And then you beat the crud out of Michigan State, who, they don't run the ball particularly well. They don't have a good defense, but Chow's their quarterback. I believe in him, and that game wasn't even close. You beat up on them, and then you beat Maryland again last week. A 3-point victory, and you've won 3 in a row. And, Cignetti said this earlier in the week where he was like, yeah, we're playing a 3-0 football team. We're playing an undefeated football team. They are totally different. The staff changes than they were to go into the year. And this is quietly becoming, or maybe not even really quietly at this point, just an incredible college football story. And I'm so excited to watch this game. Jerry Neuheisel, who if you're a casual, you probably think the blonde guy with the long hair is their head coach. He's actually not. He's their offense coordinator. He's calling the plays. He's been a Bruin forever. He's been on that staff forever as a position coach. He was a quarterback there several years ago. His dad, of course, former coach, works for CBS. Great story. He's done a tremendous job. And they just look like they're totally different. They're playing with confidence. They're playing quickly. They're playing with rhythm. And there's a flow to their games. It's not really choppy. And they're doing a tremendous job. And they all of a sudden they went from having no belief and being in complete shambles to like, oh, we'll take on the world. And the kind of belief in which they're playing with here at this point. Tim Skipper's their interim head coach. He's done a great job, obviously, shifting that culture here. It's a big number, 25.5. Indiana has the much better team. It's in Bloomington. I understand all those things. But don't be surprised if this is a solid game. And obviously, Nico Iamaleava is a big story here. Look, the way he left Tennessee was a mess, right? It was very messy. It was bad. Unfortunately, that's just kind of, where you're at here with the the transfer portal and NIL. Did he want more money? Did he want, the offense to change a little bit, be more catered towards his strengths? I don't know. There's debates all over about that. But, they were sitting there, it's basically a quarterback trade, right? Because Aguilar was going to be at UCLA, and then he goes to Tennessee. He's having a solid year. And I think for the first few weeks, everyone's like, well, clearly Tennessee won the trade. And I think they still did, right? But you're seeing why Iamaleava was a 5-star guy, why there was so much buzz and conversation and controversy about him leaving for UCLA. If he was a cruddy quarterback that didn't have any talent, nobody would be talking about it. Yeah, it was a mess, and yeah, it's borderline embarrassing for how him and his team handled it. But I mean, the reason why it was such a big story is because he's such a big talent, and now we're starting to see that a little bit more here with Neuheisel calling the plays there. Offensively, he's running the football tremendously. I mean, there was a point, I wasn't doing this show, obviously, at the time, but when he was starting as a freshman at Tennessee a few weeks in, where I was like, oh, he might be the best quarterback in the country. And then, obviously, things fizzled out. He had the injuries. I think he was hurt against Ohio State. It wouldn't have made a difference. Ohio State, way better. That Tennessee team last year, not very good. And, he leaves, and then the first 4 games at UCLA, he stinks. But you're starting to see him play some better football here. And, we're going to see. Obviously, it's on the road here, right? The Penn State game, it was obviously at home for UCLA. So, it's going to be difficult having to fly to Bloomington, right, all the way from L.A. But I'm really interested about this game. Indiana's for real, but it's a big number, 25.5. And we'll revisit this game here in a little bit. Another great game at noon, Ole Miss and Oklahoma. Ole Miss is ranked number 8. Oklahoma is ranked number 13. Oklahoma is 5.5-point favorites in this game. And this is there's always a couple each week where you look at the line and you go, what? And that's kind of where we are. So this isn't going to be one of our best bets of the weekend. I was surprised to see that Oklahoma's a 5.5-point favorite here. The matchup between the coaches is fascinating. Obviously, Lane Kiffin, lots of buzz about him potentially going to Florida. We talked about it earlier in the week on the show, but he calls the plays offensively for Ole Miss. And Brent Venables, the head coach of Oklahoma, he calls the defense. So that's kind of a chess match there between two guys that are really, really good at what they do. Say what you want about Venables as a head coach. As a play caller on defense, he's elite. And he proved that at Clemson and still proving that here with Oklahoma. And that's a really good defense. That's one of the top 5 defenses in the country. And it's going to be fascinating because that's obviously their strength defensively for the Sooners. And the strength for Ole Miss is obviously on offense. Trinidad Chambliss, he's been solid this year. Remember, he wasn't the starter. It was Simmons. Simmons, I think, is healthy, but they're still sticking with Chambliss. I don't know if that's necessarily the right call. Look, they kind of had that Georgia game won last week. I was surprised that game was as close as it was. They kind of just collapsed a little bit there in the fourth quarter. I believe the Dogs outscored them 17-0 in the fourth quarter. That obviously was the difference in the ball game. But I actually left that game thinking more highly of Ole Miss than I did going in, because I remember Ole Miss was ranked 5 at the time, and I was like, this is ridiculous. I had them at 9, I think, in mine at that time, and then I think I still have them at 9 here this week. So it didn't really change in my rankings, and like I said, I think probably higher of them than I did going into that Georgia game, despite the loss. Again, they're kind of opposites, right? It's a team in Ole Miss predicated on their offense, and a team in Oklahoma that's predicated on their defense, and it's going to be strength on strength. And obviously, whoever wins that matchup, I think, is going to ultimately win the football game. John Mateer, he was clearly the Heisman frontrunner before he got hurt, and he had that hand injury. And look, the past 2 weeks, he hasn't looked like John Mateer, right? And it's unfortunate. Give him a lot of credit for coming back so shortly after surgery and, fighting through it and gutting it out. Respect the heck out of him for doing that. But if you remember, Curtis Rourke, the Indiana quarterback last year, had this same injury. Same hand injury. He missed the time. He had the surgery. When he came back, he was never the same. And, he was good enough to be out there and still be solid, but it was like, all right, he clearly is not as good as he once was. Unfortunately, it kind of feels like that's the situation here for Mateer. I hope I'm wrong. I hope he can get back to playing at that Heisman level, but I just don't know if he can do that with the hand injuries, which is very unfortunate for him because he was having such a great year. But this is game 1 of their gauntlet, right? So, Oklahoma's schedule, take a look at it if you haven't already, but it's about to get crazy for the Sooners. And they've already, by the way, of course, played some difficult games. So this is great. It's at noon, 5.5 points. Oklahoma's the favorite. Not a best bet of the weekend. My gut tells me to kind of walk into the trap here and take Ole Miss. But that's significant, obviously, that Oklahoma is a 5.5-point favorite in this game. There are the distractions, with Kiffin and, what they got going on there with him potentially leaving. I'm interested to see how he kind of handles that over the course of the next few weeks. But great game at noon, Oklahoma and Ole Miss, top 15 matchup. I'm really excited about this one at 3:30. Missouri and Vanderbilt, another great game in the SEC. Vandy favored by 2.5. Vandy is a top 10 team for the first time since 1947. Incredible what Clark Lee and company have done at Vanderbilt's. Look, Clark Lee's going to get calls. We did our segment on the James Franklin replacements and, of course, the Billy Napier replacements at Florida, and he's going to get calls, as he should. He should get both Penn State and Florida should both call him, I think. But then when you look at the domino effect, after that, he should get calls, right? Because let's say Kiffin goes to Florida. Well, the Ole Miss job is open. If I'm Ole Miss, I'm calling Clark Lee. Hey, Clark, we need you, right? And even, Missouri, if Drinkwitz goes there, I'm calling Clark Lee. Now, I don't know if I would leave Vandy for Missouri. In fact, I probably would not. Vandy for Ole Miss, maybe. But there's going to be, and more jobs might open up too. Brian Kelly, they're getting ticked off down there at the Bayou. Things aren't looking good for Brian Kelly. Talk about their game here in a second. Florida State, right? That job could be open, so there could be some massive jobs open, and all teams should be calling Clark Lee. He's done a tremendous job with them. Missouri's pass rush is good, and Ty Simpson, in my opinion, the Heisman frontrunner, didn't light up the stat sheet in the Missouri game, but the way that he handled the pressure that they brought, I thought was tremendous. And we'll see if Diego Pavia can do that there as well. And Pavia, of course, is very, very elusive. Pavia is an incredible college quarterback. Say what you want about him. He was hitting the Heisman pose last week. Like, brother, what are you doing? You ain't winning the Heisman. But, he's got some moxie. He's got some confidence. And the biggest thing to me about Pavia is how his team rallies around him and how he wills his team to victory. Kind of reminds me of Haynes King a little bit with Georgia Tech, right? Look, Vanderbilt, are they a top, I had them at 7 in mine. AP has them at 10. Are they a top 7 or 10, roster as far as their talent goes? No. They're not. I think they're a top 25 roster. They do have some good players. But it's a lot of it is predicated on just willing, and Diego Pavia just willing them to victory, and he does that. He did it last week against a good LSU defense. They hung 30-plus points on them, which is tremendous. And, the quarterback matchup in this game is solid. Bo Perbula, good player. He can run too, right? They're going to be running that game with the quarterback position. He's turned the ball over a little bit too much of late. It's going to cost him if he does again against Vandy. But Mizzou's got to get back to running the football with Ahmad Hardy, who should be the best running back in the country, and they haven't really ran the football very well, dating back to a couple of weeks ago there against Alabama. So we'll see. I think in this matchup, it's at home. I kind of lean on, Pavia, I think, is the better quarterback. And I think, Clark Lee's got him playing with a lot of confidence. Game day's there. They've won some big games, right? I mean, that game last week against LSU, it's a big game for Vandy, and they won. And, it was a 7-point game, but they pretty much dominated that. So we will revisit this game in a little bit. Baylor and Cincinnati. Cincinnati in the top 25. They are ranked 21st. Sorsby, how about him? Guy's playing elite football. People have said, Heisman dark horse. He's not going to win the Heisman Trophy. You want to, put him in that conversation? I mean, he deserves a lot of credit. He's playing at an elite level right now, and that's a UC offense that is playing at an elite level really there as well. They're running the football. They're throwing the football. Satterfield doing a great job. Did not see that coming, but got to give them credit where credit is due. The game feels like a shootout. Feels like it's like I think one of these teams, the winner of this game, might have 50 points. Like it's going to be a lot of points scored. Nobody has really been able to stop UC. I mean, they ran up and down on Iowa State. The biggest thing for them is I think this is a prove-it game for Cincinnati. I'm not convinced yet that they're real. But if they win and beat Baylor, now Baylor's 4-3. They're not a world beater, but that's a really good offense. With Sora Robertson there at the helm. And if UC wins this game and wins this game convincingly, I'm ready to say, yeah, they're going to have a chance to go win the Big 12. I need to see one more, and I need to see them, look good in the process. Not just win the game, but let's see the offense continue to be elite, and let's see if the defense can get any stops against Sawyer Robertson. It's 3.5-point spread in favor of Cincinnati. 4 o'clock game, Nippert Stadium. Environment's going to be electric, right? When UC is good, the fans show out. And, it's not the biggest venue, obviously, in the world. It's kind of small. But it gets electric in there, and I'm excited about that game. Cincinnati and Baylor, they're balanced. UC is, but the questions, of course, lie on the defense. Corleone there in the middle does a nice job stopping the run. They sometimes struggle applying pressure on opposing quarterbacks, and you're really worried about the back end of your defense there if you're UC. Feels like a shootout. Cincinnati 3.5-point favorites there. We'll revisit that in a second as well. A&M and LSU. A&M 2.5-point favorites in the game. They're ranked third in the AP poll. LSU is 20. Death Valley at night is tough place to play. Really tough place to play. I'll do the hand-up accountability on LSU. I was wrong. I picked them to win the national title, and it's just not – it ain't happening. It ain't happening. Brian Kelly, we'll see if he gets fired or not. I think that's a real possibility for them. No starting left tackle for LSU. That's huge when you're without one of your starting tackles in any level of playing football. That is massive. Offensively, they've struggled, right? Nussmeier's banged up. He's not healthy, but I thought he would look a lot better than he has at this point. They're not scoring a ton of points. They've got a couple of, the losses now. They got 2. The Ole Miss game and the Vandy game. I felt good about them going into Vandy and winning. They did not. Vandy dominated that game. Credit to Diego Pavia and Clark Lee for getting that done. They need to run the football a little bit better. LSU, again, Nuss is beat up. Needs some of that weight off his shoulders. No Whit Weeks, again, one of the best defensive players in the country. And that's where I was surprised last week with the Vandy-LSU game. Vandy scored 31 points on them. I thought LSU was one of the best defenses in the country. I did not expect that to happen for the LSU Tigers there defensively. And we'll see if they bounce back. This is a huge game for Brian Kelly. If he has his third straight loss and it's not even Halloween yet, that's a massive issue there, because that's not acceptable down at LSU. Let's be very, very clear about that. I dropped A&M down in my rankings. AP still has them at 3. The defense, they gave up 40-plus points to Arkansas. I get Bobby Petrino offensively. That's what he's known for, and he knows what he's doing offensively. But that was a big-time red flag there for me. But A&M's a really balanced team, right? Before that game, they had played good defense, and they can run it. They can throw it. Marcel Reed, he's not getting enough Heisman love, in my opinion. He's done a tremendous job. Elko, he has established a great culture here in these 2 years that he's been here. Concepcion and Craver on the outside. I think it's the best wide receiving duo probably outside of Columbus. I think you'd throw Alabama up there, as a potential another team there as well. But they got some skill guys on the outside. Again, they can run the football, the RPO stuff with Marcel Reed. And that's a fascinating game. I'm staying away from it. Again, Death Valley at night. Incredibly tough place to play. Issues there defensively a little bit for A&M. LSU, Brian Kelly, they have their backs completely up against the wall. In their eyes, they're trying to run the table and still sneak into the playoff. But that defense for A&M is concerning after that performance last week against Arkansas. Michigan and Michigan State. Michigan's ranked 25. They are 14.5-point favorites on the road in East Lansing. And Aiden Childs is a good player. Good quarterback there for Michigan State. Unfortunately, there isn't enough good stuff about their team. They can't run the ball, and they can't stop the run there on defense. And I think Michigan showed a little bit last week in the Washington game. That looked like Michigan, right? Blocking well, running the football, tough physical football, and in turn, you got the most efficient game that Bryce Underwood has played in his career. I think, as a college football fan, we're kind of rooting for, Michigan to figure this thing out and go on a bit of a run here. So the Ohio State game feels, it always feels big, but even feels a little bit bigger, right? Because the past few years, it's just felt so massive, and now it's like, well, Michigan's got a couple of losses. What are they going to do here? But big-time win for them last week against Washington. And we'll see if they can continue that momentum here. But Childs, I'm expecting him to have a good game. 14.5, that's a lot. Not one of our best bets of the weekend. I would probably side with Sparty here at home. Big-time game, rivalry game, right? But, it's a big game for Bryce Underwood on the road, and we'll see exactly how he performs in the game. But Michigan might be turning a corner here and potentially, not going to predict it, but potentially in a spot where they can run the table leading up to the Ohio State game on Thanksgiving weekend.